Alright guys, alright. Second video for the day. First video we put up was a review for Ghostbusters Afterlife. And believe it or not, I'm actually about to go and rewatch it. I loved it, I really did. But before we do that, we do have to non-pay bills. Because obviously this channel is demonetized. But yeah, we obviously do want to go through and talk about some news. Because as you're probably aware, 270 doctors have signed a form to say they need to censor Joe Rogan. And Joe Rogan is a menace, they're claiming. A menace to society. Now, obviously, here, 270 doctors called Joe Rogan's podcast a menace to public health. Joe Rogan, he just has to be stopped. He's too powerful. How dare we have someone get 11 million views per episode who doesn't speak and follow the medical industry? There's another one, right, from The Guardian. Menace to public health. 270 doctors criticize Spotify over Joe Rogan's podcast. Look, guys, we're going to have to stop listening to Joe Rogan because of these 270 doctors. Now, obviously, the I'm totally being sarcastic here, by the way. The UFC Dana White defends Joe Rogan after 270 doctors. Oh, 270 doctors have spoken out against Joe Rogan. Oh my God, what are we going to do? Well, how about what we can do is we can start looking into these 270 doctors, right? Because obviously they're trying to make it seem like there's this real big push to stop Joe Rogan and his misinformation campaign, right? So who are these 270 doctors that we keep hearing about? Well, the 270 doctors that called out Joe Rogan by the author of the letter, the vast majority of its signatories are not medical doctors. Oh. But hang on, that can't be right. Because they keep telling me that 270 doctors, 270 doctors, 270 doctors, 270, right? There's no way the mainstream media would lie to me about this. So you're seeing all those blaring corporate press headlines targeting Joe Rogan this week, reporting a letter that 270 doctors, which describe the famous podcaster as a menace to public health. Well, it turns out the real arbiters of misinformation are the individuals behind the letter itself. Oh yeah, the people that are calling Joe Rogan an arbiter of misinformation are literally the arbiters of misinformation themselves. They're literally lying about how many people signed this and what medical professions they had. But we'll get to that, don't you worry. They are being helped along by a corporate media that misreporting the credentials of its signatories. It was first reported by Rolling Stone with a story titled "Doctors Demand Spotify Put an End to, what lies Joe Rogan experience." Right, and here's the Guardian, menace to public health, which we actually went through and we found, by the way. So, Salone doctors urge Spotify to stop enabling Joe Rogan. Right. Washington Examiner said that the COVID pandemic, Joe Rogan has repeatedly spread misinformation and reports on his podcasts, provoking distrust in science and medicine, the doctors said in a letter. So even Twitter got on the propaganda against Joe Rogan, adding the medical experts' letter to their credential headlines. So, I reviewed this open letter, and it turns out that only 100 of the 270 signatories of the letter are the people qualified with medical degrees. So just to reiterate, they're claiming 270 doctors signed an open letter to Spotify to stop misinformation coming out of Joe Rogan's podcasts. The problem is that only 100 of these medical doctors actually are qualified as MDs. That's just for a start. Already we've cut them in half. Over half, right? Because they did 270. Half of 270, say 260, would be 130. That's even less than that. Right? It's 100 for a start. And this is we're starting to cut them down already. This is like the whole Russia thing, right? Supposedly Russia, the intelligence community in the USA claimed that Russia hacked the elections, and it ended up being like the people like from the Coast Guard and stuff. But you know, so are employed as medical doctors, universities who are so a large chunk of that 100 or so medical doctors are MDs employed at universities who are not in full practices of medicine. So out of the 100, a large chunk of them are just doctors who teach at universities, sorry bug, and who are not fully practicing people or MDs of medical. They're not fully practicing medical professionals. Yet part of the letter reads, as physicians, we bear them and blah, 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 blah. So they're trying to pass themselves off as physicians. Okay. Interesting. So the letter denouncing Joe Rogan as pressuring Spotify to censor has all kinds of rumored random signatures. By my count, the letter is signed by over 50 PhD academics, around 60 college professionals, 29 nurses, 10 students, and 4 medical residents, and even a handful of science podcasters. The letter, which uses the word misinformation 9 times in 5 paragraphs, concludes a call for Spotify to censor Joe Rogan as a policy to moderate the misinformation on the platform, while spreading misinformation themselves, mind you. Gotta love the irony, right? Notably, there is no information or whatever the group is behind the creation and open letter, blah, 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 blah. So, out of 270, over half of them aren't even MDs. The large bulk of them tend to be people that teach at universities and whatnot, and only a small handful of them are actually trained physicians who actually have full-time practices. Wow, this narrative fell apart real fast, didn't it? Now, obviously, Spotify has reacted to this and said no. They're not going to censor Joe Rogan, and then continue to receive 11 million views on his platform. At the end of the day, all they're doing is they're making Joe Rogan bigger. They're advertising him, because all this makes me go, oh yeah, I haven't watched a Joe Rogan podcast in like 3 days. I should watch one. Thank you very much for reminding everybody that there is a Joe Rogan podcast on Spotify that I have not watched. Last one I watched was Dr. Malone. 3 hours of it. Whew. Red pills falling from the sky. But at the end of the day, guys, yeah, it's really ironic that they're sitting there calling him a beacon of misinformation or whatever they said, and that themselves are using misinformation to try and bolster their claim, to try and make it out that 270 doctors are claiming that Joe Rogan is spreading misinformation. Here's the thing, there's not 270 doctors. Some of them were even pharmacists. Some of them are medical students. Some of them are just teachers at a university. Some of them are nurses. They're not doctors. A nurse is not a doctor. It's a nurse. So, yeah, at the end of the day, really interesting how this narrative kind of fell apart in real time. And look, I support Spotify for not wanting to censor him. I don't blame him. Because if I had saw this, I would have been mad. But guys, let me know what your thoughts are in that comment section below. Apart from that, guys, obviously do check out Spotify and watch Joe Rogan. He does an amazing job on his podcast. As for this itself, I find this hilariously funny. I really, really do. But yeah, it just goes to show that a non-medical paid stooge gets all sorts of blowback when it comes to the medical industry if you start speaking out against them. You start talking about alternative treatments and whatnot, they will literally ruin you and literally put fake information out to try and ruin you. And that's what I reckon this is all about. The reason why they hate Joe Rogan is he gets 11 million views, which is millions of more views than even like Fox News. And at the end of the day, he's not a corporate medical stooge. He's not getting paid by Big Pharma. He's not getting paid by the medical industrial complex. And at the end of the day, he can't be brought. That to me is why they hate him. But let me know your thoughts are in that comment section below. Obviously, this video has been helpful. Please smack that like button. If you're new to the channel, welcome and subscribe. Apart from that, guys, we will see you in the next demonetized video from YouTube. Have a great night and enjoy.